Welcome back to the Shacknews Awards. We're handing out all sorts of awards still, which requires some strategery, right? Sometimes we've had to plan which ones we're going to talk about and figure out what times we're going to talk. A lot of strategy involved in an award show like this, especially when you don't have companies throwing six figures at you for trailers. We have to be a little more creative. We have to wear wigs. Sometimes we have to wear garbage AR headsets. But here we're talking about best strategy game. And this is kind of a stacked category. So here are the nominees, and then we'll get to talking about them, and then we'll get to voting. Unicorn Overlord, Homeworld 3, Kanitsugami, Path of the Goddess, Satisfactory, Frostpunk 2, and Metal Slug Tactics. What a stacked category we have here, folks. I don't even know where to start. Let's start with Unicorn Overlord. TJ, you reviewed this for Shacknews, right?
Yes, and Unicorn Overlord is very, very, very high on my just games in general I've played list this year.
Mm-hmm.
This is another one out of Vanillaware, who, up to my knowledge at this point, having played just about everything they put out, can do no wrong. And the weirdest and coolest thing about Vanillaware is that they never do the same genre twice in like a consistent way. They always go and do something vastly different from the thing they did before. We had Odin Sphere, which is like a kind of RPG brawler. Dragon's Crown is probably the closest thing to that, which is like a full-on arcade co-op brawler. But then you get 13 Sentinels, which is like a narrative-heavy strategy game. And then we arrive at Unicorn Overlord, which is a full-on modernized version of Ogre Battle.
Mm.
And for those who don't know, Ogre Battle had a very specific style of strategy system where you would arrange the units that you had into teams and formations, and then you send that entire group out as one unit. And then the battlefield is moving on a time system where the characters, depending on what kind of composition you've given them, will move better or worse over the terrain in real time as they approach their targets.
It was something funny I noticed, TJ, just to jump in, Joseph, early on, he's so much faster than the other, his platoon is way faster than the other groups, and I didn't know that at first. So I was like, yeah, we should all go this way. And I'm like, oh crap, Joseph reached there way ahead of everyone else. So he's fighting alone. And I wasn't planning on that. And I was like, but yeah, the combination of that time mechanic, which is driven by success or failures in the battles, but also these win conditions, right? So it's beat this person and do it in this time. It felt like an evolution of that, what made games like Advance Wars cool. It was it's not, oh, here's just X amount of turns. It's this time mechanic that can be altered by how you're performing mid-battle that I thought was really neat.
It's such a cool system for the unit arrangements too, because there are so many different kinds of character classes in that game. Mm-hmm. And you can arrange them however you want. If you're looking high damage, you can put mercenaries and defense breakers in your squad. If you're looking for sheer mobility, you can put you can make an entire crew of horsemen. If you need to get over rough terrain fast, there's a lot of flying mounts that are good for doing that. And just min-maxing in this game is so fun. The other fantastically in-depth part of this is the relationship system in the game, because every single one of these characters has connections to another character. And if you have them fight together, not only do they grow a meter that makes them do more damage as a team, but they also unlock certain parts of their story that you wouldn't get otherwise. And I love that. It stresses experimentation and adaptation at every single stage of the game. And it's so fun to play around with these characters because they're all beautiful as hell. Their animations are awesome. And it's one of the few games where I won't skip battles because I like watching them fight each other. It's so fun.
No, for sure. It's it runs very well on Switch too, which I know is a common complaint this year about games, but it's very well optimized for Switch. Yeah, I love it. I probably put like 2 hours into it like the first time I played it, and I was like, oh, I need to stop playing this for a second. But yeah, I really do enjoy it. Like I mentioned it before, but like I don't know, Advance Wars kind of came and went. Was that last year or the year before? Uh, I fell off of Advance Wars 1+2 remaster or whatever pretty quickly. This is different. This is like way more options for the battles, like and team composition, but also that overworld is just cool, TJ. Like actually like watching flanking and like military moves playing out, that they did a lot of work on the map that I think makes the game a lot better than other games in the genre.
For sure.
But yeah, very worthy nominee. And oddly enough, the next one we're talking about, you also reviewed, TJ, and you also liked a lot. Homeworld 3.
Yeah, Homeworld has been a long running series, and it's built up some very, 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 very passionate fans. My understanding is that the licensing to this game kind of moved around a bit, but for Homeworld 3, it got back into the hands of Blackbird Interactive, who are the original creators of the Homeworld games. And I feel like they did an amazing job with structuring the battlefields and the scenarios of this game. Like, Homeworld strategy battles are like, they are very, very complex in the way that you need to like not only think about your unit compositions, but you also need to think about like the structure of the space, because even though you're flying around in like outer space, there are these gigantic structures around you that can like they can literally block your unit's gunfire. Ballistics in Homeworld 3 are actually like set to where if the aim is off, it can just fly right past an enemy and hit something else like persistently. And it's it's almost like a physics puzzle carrying out battles in this game, which in of itself kept me just like intrigued and thinking about how I want to move my units and how I want to like structure squadrons and how I want to approach the enemy and take the least amount of damage that I can.
Nice. Yeah, another worthy nominee. And what I'm gonna call maybe one of our most stacked categories of the year. This is all these games are great. I think everyone should try them out. Or if you haven't, I think there's some demos for some of them. But next up is Kunitsugami Path of the Goddess, which is, I'd say, one of the more unique titles in this category this year, where it kind of takes on like the action adventure side of things and throws it into a strategy game.
It's closer to something like a tower defense kind of game.
Ozzy loves weird Capcom.
Yeah, I do love weird Capcom. And what Kunitsugami is you have a goddess who is trying to cleanse the nearby villages of a great evil, and you have to make sure she's protected as she does her work. You gotta let her cook, and as she does, you have to not only take on like demons that are coming on, you take them on like in kind of a Devil May Cry kind of scenario, but a big part of it is you can't be everywhere at once. So as you free villagers from evil, you assign them different roles, and the different villagers in different roles have to be stationed in certain places where they can best take on enemies that are coming out and trying to get to the goddess. So there's a huge strategy element to it that I don't know if the conventional user is ready for, but you learn it really fast, and it's really engaging, and it's really interesting how the different ways you approach a given level. So I definitely love that it makes you think in that way.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's just that the balance of gameplay, like between defending the place, but also like being mindful of the path of the goddess and stuff, like it's just different. It's a very different game. And like I applaud companies that actually make unique gameplay experiences right now. And I think this is one of those. And it is like a new IP for Capcom, and like, but they gave it some love. Like there was some love at, I think you guys were at Tokyo Game Show. There was like a large presence. Yeah, and you saw the game, or sorry, the Summer Game Fest too. Yeah, like it got a lot of love from Capcom this year, and I think it kind of fell by the wayside for a lot of people. But it's a cool, different kind of strategy game, which I think is true of this next nominee too. Satisfactory, which went 1.0 this year. It's between this and Factorio Space Age, like it's a great time for massive factory simulation games. And this is one that does require strategy. But I don't know, TJ, you're a fan of Satisfactory, right?
Yes. This game has like no fail state. You're not like facing off against enemies. You're not facing off against opposition. Your greatest challenge is to build this factory up until you can automate it to a point where you don't need to touch anything.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like just the sheer breadth of tech in this game where you like take a machine and put it together and put a belt against another machine. And at first you have to do the inputs yourself. You have to put the lumber in so it turns into like wood planks, or you have to put the iron in so you can turn it into refined ore, so you can turn it into screws. And then eventually you build enough machines that they do all that for you. And it's so satisfying it is satisfactory.
It's not just a clever name. You're telling me.
To see your industrialization come together in a way that like it'll take care of itself now. You don't need to worry about it, and you can move on to your next project.
Okay, so this may seem dumb, but I am someone who kind of comes from like these maker games. Like these are kind of my jam.
Mm-hmm.
And I've intentionally kind of avoided Factorio and Satisfactory for that reason, because I don't have enough time. I feel bad when I play these games because I'm like, I could have like done real work. I could have accomplished something in this time. But these are great ways to pass time, and if you have the time to do it, they're fulfilling. I will say, like, when you have a factory that's really going well, or you've built like a combo of machines that's trucking along, it's super rewarding. But because I fall into the trap of spending hundreds of hours on Mario Maker levels and stuff, like I have intentionally tried to avoid this game for that reason. But that is not an indictment of it at all. It's just speaks to how addictive these games can be, really, honestly.
For sure.
And I think it's great.
Also, multiplayer. And you can go co-op with this game and build stuff with your buds.
That is cool as hell. Yeah, for sure. God, Murderer's Row of nominations, you guys. Next up, Frostpunk 2. The, I don't know, toughest game on this list, I think is fair to say, Sam.
Yeah, Frostpunk 2, man. Talk
Life
about a
is
game.
hard. Life
Life
hard
is hard. Life is brutal
in that game.
It is
Nothing
brutal.
comes easy in that game.
Yeah, I think this is our only city management political game on our list at the moment, with a few of the other nominations being sort of like turn-based, fight, defense, that sort of stuff. With Frostpunk 2, it's about surviving in a hostile wasteland, just a frozen tundra, where every decision you make is important to the survival of your city, and you'll be making decisions every couple of minutes. And talk about a pendulum swing where I feel like either the greatest political mind our civilization has ever seen, or a bumbling fool watching my world and creation turn to ash in my hands. Whether I'm picking, like I talked about in my review, one of the first decisions I had to make was deciding what to do with the people who had died in the wasteland. And it was to harvest the bodies for nutrients and to figure out what's going on, or give the people the opportunity to say goodbye to their loved ones with the proper funerary rites. I made my decision. Some people were very happy, some people weren't so happy. And it just kept going like that, and they mounted on top of each other. And then as you get later on in the campaign, the decisions you've made earlier are sort of coming back to bite you, and you're just balancing all these political elements as you're trying to desperately just to survive. And so at times, like, I was standing at my desk going, we're all on the same team here. We're all just trying to survive. We're trying to get through. Please just trust me. And so I had to obviously impose martial law and round up the rebel rousers and ship them off to my other place.
Everyone does.
Please trust me, or you will be round up and thrown in a jail.
Yeah, well, they're causing problems, man. They were shutting down industry that we needed to stay alive. And so whilst you're handling all that, on the other front, you're desperately trying to find resources. You're trying to find oil. You're trying to find reactors to power up new buildings. And so, yeah, you're managing all these things. And talk about, like, strategic thinking. For me, when it comes to a strategy game, if I'm not frozen in indecision as, like, well, what decision am I going to, like, what I choose here is going to have a profound impact on whether I survive to the end of the campaign or everything goes up in flames.
I think I was thinking about it too, Sam. The political side of it's really interesting because no matter what you do, you are always going to piss off 50% of the people, right? And it feels very on point with that, where no matter what you do, even if it's for the best. And the other thing is that there is no real meta. You know, like, as you play games through, you kind of understand, like, oh, okay, now I understand the path. I understand the formula. I've unlocked the formula. I don't know that that is necessarily a thing here, because there really aren't any right or wrong answers. Like, there's always an upside and there's always a downside. And it's really just about trying to fit the puzzle pieces together as best you can. I think something else that I thought was really cool was the Twitch integration that they have with this game, where you can actually let your Twitch community vote. So instead of you just making all the decisions, if you're a streamer and you're playing this game, your Twitch community can actually vote on certain resolutions and whatnot, and they can shape how things go, which I thought was a really cool way to do a strategy game with, like, that social aspect to kind of, like, include viewers of popular streamers. I thought that was really neat.
Because sometimes the decisions that you're making in this game, you don't just get to make it. You're not a I've forgotten the word. Your say is
a dictator.
Yeah, that's it. You're not a dictator. So you have to take your idea to the Senate and all the political system that you've got, the Republic or whatever, and the different factions within your city vote on it. And you can see from the outset, this particular faction is strongly against it. This one is willing to be swayed. And you're like, okay, well, maybe I'll try and sway these people. What can we give them? You can bribe them. Well, give them an offering for whatever they want to do. You can promise them that you will do a certain type of research, whether they want you to research a new sort of filter for the mining facilities, or you can promise them that next time it comes to a political thing, they can have whatever they want. You will vote in line with what they want. And so you'll make some promises, and then, of course, things bite you in the butt, and you got to make a promise, and you got to deliver.
It's not unlike recruiting in NCAA, Donovan, where you have to make a promise to a prospect and then you forget, and then they get angry at you. Sam, I just want to point out something that the Frostpunk devs really liked in your review. There was a sentence that I think really stuck out. They shared it. What Frostpunk 2 excels at is letting you believe you're doing well before snatching that happiness away. It just goes from bad to worse in the best way possible.
Yeah.
I think that encapsulates the challenge of this game kind of perfectly. Like, normally I would find that frustrating, but in this, it's funny. Like, the stories that you were telling me about the various ways you failed during your review process, hilarious. And it goes back to a theme that I bring up a lot in replayability, or even just games going viral, is that emergent gameplay. And I think Frostpunk 2 has that in spades. And it's funny because it doesn't show up initially. Like, you don't know you've made the mistake usually for like a few days in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Or months, or however time works in that. But yeah, very worthy nominee. And to your point, Sam, very different games in this category. Like a lot of different games in this category this year. With one more nominee left, we got a new Metal Slug game, and it's a tactics game. Metal Slug Tactics. and it has roguelike elements.
Mm-hmm.
Wacky. This is wacky as hell. Sam, you're nodding your head approving.
Yeah, I would love to talk about this if no one else is up for the gig there.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah. I'll put it right out front. I'm terrible at strategy games when it comes to picking what I need to do and figuring it out. And turn-based games they don't really grab me. I'm not a big fan of when.
Except last year's Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, except when it's
turn-based
D&D.
as all hell,
Except when it's
you
D&D
really
style.
liked that. Yeah, really liked it.
Except when it's D&D
turn-based.
style, I do like that. When I'm talking about when you got two teams standing side by side and they.
Civ.
Yeah,
okay,
for sure. With Metal Slug Tactics, it's grid-based, and you are moving your characters each turn to avoid damage. You are choosing your attacks as you go, and the developers have somehow managed to infuse the idea of a run and gun, which is what Metal Slug has always been. They've infused that idea into the tactics game, where you are encouraged to move your characters every turn as much as you possibly can. The further you move them, the more adrenaline you generate. The more adrenaline you generate, you can use that to create special moves, whether it's cool ricochet shots that can blast from one enemy to another, dropping bombs, igniting areas, throwing big grenades, grenade launches, the usual suite of like badass stuff you would see in a Metal Slug game. But then it also has this neat mechanic synchronization, where if an enemy is on a point in space where two allies align, they will both shoot them at the same time. So you'll have one person attack, do all their abilities, and the other ally will go, or Marco will go, hey, I can see that person, I'm going to shoot him as well. And so you have this sort of situation where I will look at a map and I'll go, okay, in these 25 available spots on the map, I can move to these ones here and set up my guys, and then I can start attacking, and I want to use Theo's grenade launcher first before I use Marco's assault rifle so that I can chain these correctly. And it ends up just being this explosive battle where now you're moving around, but it's not just kill everything. You've got different sub-objectives that you can do, where it's like kill all the targets, or ensure that Marco takes no damage, or make sure that Tama is involved in 3 takedowns. And then you got boss battles, defend miners, reach, escort the lady who carries the bag that you see in the Metal Slug games, escort her to the finish line without her taking any damage. So I think it's absolutely phenomenal and a massive hidden gem this year, especially if you're into those sort of like Into the Breach style tactics games.
I think the thing that stuck out to me compared to a lot of tactics games, Sam, is that the boss battles they did it justice. They did justice to the Metal Slug franchise, which is known for awesome boss battles. Yeah. And I think that that's the thing that really stuck out to me, is they nailed that element like kind of perfectly. And that does stick out when you compare it to Into the Breach or some of the other games in this genre.
Yeah. Oh, it's a roguelike. So
yeah,
if you fail, you get to go back and you get the credits that you've acquired to like boost you guys up further. So there's this constant sense of like you're powering yourself up, you're getting better, you're unlocking new combos and abilities and stuff. Yeah.
Did that make you like the game more or less?
Well, I like it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just know, Shack Together producer Joe Stasio, he was like worried by the roguelike element because I
think it really works.
He's a huge Final Fantasy Tactics fan, and I think he also liked Into the Breach. So that element, I think we've seen this year. Sometimes you make a game a roguelike and you become the indie darling of the year. Sometimes you do it in, lesser success.
I think it fits that sort of quick replay value that Metal Slug has always had.
There was some game about climbing a mountain that was a roguelike that was like insanely hard. I can't remember.
Getting Over It?
No. That is also insanely hard. It was some indie game.
I should know this right now too, because I also love that game.
I did not love it. I said it was hard as hell. But I just remember, I was like, this game was fascinating to me because it was very difficult, and it got negative reviews because of the difficulty.
Was it with the red hair? The
It was like you were it was not Celeste, if that's what you're
Celeste,
saying.
yeah, because you climb a mountain in
No,
that too. So
I would never say something negative about that game. I love Celeste. Sorry, I digress. I'll Google that shit, figure it out, or I'll ask one of the many AI chatbots if they can help me. So yeah, anyone else want to chime in on any of these games before we vote, or are we ready to vote?
It tickles the heck out of me that they put the Ikari Warriors in Metal Slug Tactics and they gave them their King of Fighters moves so that Clark gets to do his Argentine backbreaker on enemies on the field. I love a good wrestle, man, and having them be able to do that stuff is just hilarious.
Nice. I'll start with you, TJ.
In this case, though, I'm going with Unicorn Overlord.
But once again, like, it's not because you dislike these other games. It's just that you think Unicorn Overlord did some stuff differently or better, right?
All of the boxes for me out of a good strategy game, a good RPG, a good narrative game, good music, good art style. That game is amazing on a lot of fronts.
Yeah, we didn't mention the music. It is outstanding. And a game, I don't want to say it's repetitive, but a game with repetitive battle gameplay loops, like having good music makes it all the difference. So really solid music. And I actually like the character design quite a bit in the game too. Like they look cool, their stories are interesting. Yeah. Ozzy.
All these are really good, but I'm gonna ultimately go with Frostpunk 2. And one thing I really like about Frostpunk 2 is you're running that entire like colony, but you can focus and zoom in on like little parts of it, and you can just watch that whole life unfold. That's like kind of a cool little life sim type of thing. So I like that aspect of the game too.
Mm-hmm. Bill.
Frostpunk 2 for me, it's definitely my vibe in terms of the type of game it is, and I just love the high stakes of the decision making. I thought that was the thing that appealed to me the most in strategy this year.
Mm-hmm. Sam, I'm really curious which way you're going because you spoke very glowingly about Frostpunk 2 and Metal Slug Tactics. So I'm interested. What are you picking here?
I loved Frostpunk 2, but Metal Slug scratches an itch I didn't know I could reach in a genre and a series that I didn't ever anticipate to receive a tactics type game, and it worked so well. I can't wait to play more.
It's interesting because the game was announced like 5 years ago, it feels like. And then like it was radio silence for a while. The pandemic happened. We didn't hear anything about this game. But it was highly anticipated from a group of people, like people who like tactics games, but also fans of the Metal Slug series. And they nailed it. It sounds like they've really succeeded here, which is great. Steve.
I'm going Unicorn Overlord.
Mm-hmm. David.
Unicorn Overlord.
Donovan.
Unicorn Overlord.
Okay. Denny.
I'm also going with Unicorn Overlord. It's my type of vibe.
Yes, it is. And honestly, chill. It's a chill, like fun game to play, like to wind down at the end of the night too. Which I
like the jams too. It's epic as well.
Mm-hmm. Greg.
You know, Sam's argument swayed me to Metal Gear Tactics. Metal Slug Tactics, Metal Gear, Metal Slug.
Metal Gear Tactics sounds like a nightmare. Hideo Kojima making a tactics game.
Oh God, where's all the tedium?
David's like, we already talked enough about this guy.
David.
No, and look, that's fair. It doesn't matter how I vote. The vote's already been decided. But what are these other nominees here? Sorry, Homeworld, Kunitsugami. You know what? I'm voting for Kunitsugami, Path of the Goddess, because it's just different, and I like different. But if it was really a situation where Unicorn Overlord needed my vote, I was probably going to vote for Unicorn Overlord. But I just want to show some love to Kunitsugami, because Weird Capcom is good too.
You like Weird Capcom too.
But yeah, congratulations to Vanillaware. Unicorn Overlord is our best strategy game of the year 2024 here at the Shacknews Awards. Awesome.
We shall never fail.
Did you really think we'd let these atrocities go unpunished?
And not a soul among us desires liberation.
Prepare to breathe your last, Keith.